time, because I'd just like to chat to you while we give Deon an opportunity to try and resolve his problem, because I know it's a serious problem from his perspective, and we really, really do want to hear from him. Penny, there are a couple of important questions that have come through, and I'm going to share them with you because we really would like to get your feedback, please. I think the first one is just a lot of frustration and disappointment regarding the labelling regulations, because it's obviously taken us so long to get to this point, but we have now almost lost a lot of that momentum that we had, and it almost sounds like we're going to start from the beginning. It's almost like it's 7 years that we've been working on these labelling regulations, and so many people kind of holding their breath. Any comment in that regard with regards to what can we do to make the process go faster?
Can you hear me, Linda?
Yes, you're up. Off you go, Penny. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Unfortunately, it was at that point that I was made to realize that I really went over my time. So I would have dwelt a bit more on this aspect. If people recall, what we did was the labelling regulations were published in 2014. A whole round of comments were received. In fact, there were dossiers of comments. And the technical officials worked through those quite religiously, I'm told. It was before I became the director. But at some stage, the critical issues that were no consensus had been reached, or where there were real concerns, were the three issues that I tried to indicate or flag. And one was the front of pack labelling. The second one was the marketing to children. And the third was the use of sweeteners. So at that point in time, when I came on board in 2016, we had a flag meeting and agreed that because those three areas were still of concern, we would separate those out of the labelling regulations and continue work thereon, but continue to publish the regulations as they were at that point in time in totality as final regulations. However, we've had to look at that because whilst working on the front of pack labelling and the marketing to children, you realize that the marketing to children will have an impact on the nutrient profiling calculator that is currently there for claims. Because you cannot have a product having a claim, for example, and yet is going to be listed as a food that should not be marketed to children. There would be asynchrony in our regulations. So we then took an internal decision that we had to relook at publishing the section of the final part, which would not have been much, because it was only going to look at the issues around, like I showed, the typical nutrition mandatory information being mandatory. It was going to look at developments in codex, which are not being that significant other than the clarity on date marking. So in effect, there was not going to be much that would change in the labelling regulations, because a lot of the controversy was around what had been proposed in relation to marketing to children. So we were, as mentioned, we're back on the drawing board, and we are at a point now where we've interlinked all of the issues. We will now need to say to legal services, what do we do in regards to this regulation now? Because the major component has already been published. We've changed those areas that were controversial and put them in line with international standards or science that has been presented to us. And we've now created this new set of regulations. Do we publish? Do we consult? Do we publish as a draft again? So those modalities we are still working on, because actually at this point in time, I'm still awaiting the final set of regulations from the technical experts that are converting the international developments as well as the science that has been developed in country. So unfortunately, that's where we are in relation to labelling. because it's such a broad issue and such a significant issue, and it has such major implications for the industry in relation to changing labels, I would say let's rather err on the side of this cautious approach that we are taking, rather than indicating to you that, oh, we're going to give you piecemeal again, and we give you this component, and in 3 years' time, when we eventually have a final set of regulations, we give you FOP and we give you marketing to children. So from our point of view, we think it's the pragmatic way to approach it. We are seeing increasingly our obesity rates are increasing, not going down. We've seen how obesity is impacting on COVID. And because FOP and marketing to children have been shown internationally to be linked to how we can change behavior and change decisions around food, I think the industry should give us that latitude to give you a sound set of regulations that are based on international science. So that would be my humble plea and my apology as well in relation to why some people might consider that it has taken a long time.
Thank you, Penny. Thanks for that feedback. Just a couple of points. Thank you so much for the document you shared regarding the new trade zone. I will definitely make that available if that's possible. I'm assuming it's already in the public domain. We will definitely attach it. An interesting one. Namfla wants to just highlight the fact that if you look around the world, and if you look at the SDGs and you look at everything people are saying about sustainability, we have to eat more green things. But is there not an increased risk, therefore, with regards to the food safety aspects? And although we've got agriculture looking after quality, and we don't want to get more confused, is there not a gap in South African legislation for leafy greens and food safety requirements related to some of these products that we've been strongly encouraged to eat?
Leafy greens, we've been encouraging people for the longest time to eat. I'm not sure now if we are talking about eating them raw, because I think that's where a lot of the emphasis from a nutritional point of view has been placed, because of the organic and move towards as close as paleo or whatever the aspect might be. But there's also the antioxidant potential that these provide. Now, in relation to food safety, what exactly are we talking about? Are we saying that there's concerns around micro, because we've seen outbreaks in the US for XX linked to coriander, or are we more concerned? Or are we more concerned around MRLs and the fact that you don't have a lot of agricultural actives registered for use on fresh vegetables? So those are the two aspects that one could speak to. In terms of pesticides, the approach from the registrar and the approach is trying to look internationally at how we look at crop groupings, so that we don't have to develop data for every little piece of vegetable or fruit that we want to have an active registered for, but that we say as a group, Brassica family would all respond in the same way to this active ingredient, because they have the same kind of growing conditions or whatever it is in relation to their crop grouping. So from MRL perspective, we're not overly concerned, because the safety factor embedded in MRLs is also of such significant latitude that a lot of our exposures to pesticide residues or to chemical contaminants is rather coming from our environment, as being part of the industrial revolution and living in the city and being exposed to unhealthy air, etc., as opposed to the risk that one would have from eating a vegetable that might have been overly sprayed or given a specific pesticide. If we're looking at microbiology, we used to have a guideline that was in place that spoke to the microbiological criteria for when the food is consumed. So that is usually in the raw form, and it's usually related to a salad. So that's the criteria that we have in place. Well, we used to have in place. because of the international thrust that those outbreaks in the US actually put across, the Codex Alimentarius actually developed an annex or updated the Code of Practice for fresh fruits and vegetables, Code of Hygienic Practice. So I would say that that's where probably a gap is, in the sense that maybe our producers are not following that code, but I would like to think that we have responsible growers and responsible things. Further to that, there has been studies where universities have put together a study where they've researched the levels of microbiological contamination on fruits and vegetables. And we've worked closely with that. And based on the evidence that they presented, we don't see that there's a risk, because they were taking the micro criteria from the guidelines, which is food for consumption, and harvesting a lettuce and then analyzing for microorganisms. And remember, when we look at micro criteria, we always want to utilize a micro criteria on the stage of the food chain for which it is being applied. So you cannot apply ready-to-eat food to something that is harvested, because if you're going to go and look for listeria and parasites or any of the other microorganisms that would be linked to a lettuce, you will find them because it's growing in the natural environment. But in terms of the Act, we look at process, and we were specifically requested by agriculture to leave out the raw agricultural products. And when we had this reference group study going on, we actually tried to bring on board agriculture, because we felt it's an agricultural input that was probably contributing to the levels of microorganisms that were being seen. So that was the link being made to contaminated irrigation water. But what we subsequently asked I'm just trying to show the risk, that we have looked at the risk in South Africa. Yeah. What we asked the scientists also to do was, well, take this study. You've only looked at what you found. You didn't say how many you found, because remember, the dose also determines the impact in the human. So you haven't looked at whether it was pathogenic and whether or not there were sufficient amounts to cause a potential outbreak. So they then looked at it further on in the value chain, and I'm sure a microbiologist would also understand that as you go, the attrition or the ability of those microorganisms to persist goes down. And so therefore you might find one or two, but the actual process of washing or rinsing it in a vinegar water or adding vinegar to your salad would actually negate that potential contamination that might be there. So in summary, yes, we have worked with the two academic studies that looked at trying to evaluate what was the potential for risk, and we don't see that then. But I will say that we do have challenges around whether good agricultural practices are actually being assessed in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. That's really great, John. I think there's a big gap there, because currently we only have stuff for export and not for local production, which still makes me very, very nervous, because I don't eat the stuff that's being exported. I think there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the NRCS is the competent authority when it comes to fish products. And I think that, you know, so much of what you've said today has been related to fish and the development of the fish and fish products. However, I have to make sure that I do justice to the audience, and many of the people in the audience are in the newest category that falls within the control of the NRCS, and that being processed meats. I think we all appreciate the need for additional regulations post-listeriosis, but perhaps not even everyone would agree with that comment, but we do understand that in reaction to the listeriosis outbreak, there were a significant number of regulatory changes, and of much concern to industry is obviously in relation to VC 9100, the SANS 885, the changes within those documents, and so if you don't mind, I really would like us to hone in on a few of those areas, please, because I know that the fish and fish products have been well taken care of for many years, and those are well-established regulatory frameworks. You mentioned a request to change the categorization of salami, if I understood you correctly. A question specifically in relation to that comment: when will this, sort of, what's the time frame here, because it does have a significant impact, as you said, on the industry?
Thanks for that question, Linda. The changes to the VC are from or within immediate effect. The provisions thereof, provisions in the South African national standards, there are a commenting period of an implementation period, in this case, of nearly 6 months to comply with the new requirements. With the VC, it is immediate, and it is a change to the scope where we've clarified or made it very clear that salamis and salami type products or similar products to salamis that are other than salamis are falling under a specific category, because the error in the VC was that we've said that fermented products, all fermented products. So we've made that distinction to say that it is salamis and other products similar to salamis. And it will be implemented, it needs to be implemented immediately, because it takes care of the scope of the VC, and it is not a provision in the SANS 885.
And from what I understand, from what you're saying, this has already been gazetted, or it's already gone through the process of being signed off, or is it still being submitted? Sorry, Deon, did you hear my question?
It was already, Linda, sorry, it was already given to, handed over to the office of the minister, and then he needs to, he needs to sign off, so to say.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So we're waiting.
In order to be gazetted. Okay. Yeah, in order to be gazetted.
Right. Okay, so we're waiting for it to be gazetted, and are we still in the same position with regards to the levy registrations? Because, you know, in terms of that process, is that still with the minister also for sign-off?
Thanks for that question, Linda. In terms of the levy registration, we have a facility registration. The levy is a submission that the NRCS makes to the minister. So that will be a submission. I think that is still with the DTIC, with the minister and the DG, and then for the factories itself, the facilities, there we're still busy with some registration of factories.
So now when it comes to fees that are associated with you know, product testing and what have you, that's still the grey area in terms of what is actually being finalized versus what is, you know, currently within the legal framework. Is that what you're saying? Because obviously there's monies associated with testing, there's monies associated with samples, and that part is not quite finalized. Is that how I'm understanding it correctly, Deon?
And we've obviously implemented the VC and the SANS 885. We've started with factory inspections, with sampling of products, and the levies, the issue on the levies, that is dealt with currently by the DTI. And we are doing the work as per our mandate, and then the executive management and the CEO will deal with the levies moving on. So that is a submission, and if you've objected to the levies, then that will be considered by the ministry, and you will get feedback pertaining to the matter. But we've started off with enforcing, with implementation, and your products are tested, and yeah, we are waiting the conclusion with the levies. Thank you.
Okay, I think everybody's just a little bit nervous about how big the bill is going to be, you know, in relation to the work that's been done, because it's almost like signing a blank check. And so I think you can appreciate that there is quite a bit of concern regarding that, because it's just purely about, you know, budgetary requirements. Let's come back to the inspections. How often can we expect to see your smiling faces in terms of the frequency of the inspections? How's that going to work? Deon, are there those SOPs finalized? You mentioned the importance of the training of your officials and what have you. I know that it all happened quite quickly, and I know there was even resource issues. So have we managed to catch up with the SOPs and the, you know, the relating to how often the inspections are going to take place?
Thanks for that question, Linda. We've just, as part of our quality management system, ISO 17020, we are obligated to do some preventative actions as well. So we foresaw the implementation of the BC in the future. Courses were drafted, technical courses. All the officials, they did the courses on processed meat. The SOPs, directives, procedures are in place. We've got a monitoring system in place that speaks to the VC. So we have schedules that talk to our intensity and frequency of microbiological sampling, for example. And then also we're contemplating to set up a chemical monitoring system from 2022 for processed meat products. So everything is operational wise. We have all the infrastructure in place, the human resources, and as I've indicated in the presentation, we are now going to enforce the further implementation of VC 9001 SANS 885. So we are ready to rumble, Linda. There may be some hiccups, and it is important to note that it's not only from the regulatory side. It may also be from the industry side. But we did discuss this with SAMPA, with the CEO and the MD. I think it's Peter, through correspondence, where we've highlighted some issues pertaining to cooperation and to feedback and even access to facilities, Linda. So yes, we in this together. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what, I think it would be really a good idea if we had a bit of a bosberaad, or I don't know, what do they call it now in government? You know, where we all go off into a nice area and we all stay there until we come out with some resolutions. Because I really think that what we need right now is to build bridges and not to build more walls, because I know that this is a very, it's a tricky transition, and so much has been changing. So I would really, hope that the opportunity for more discussion will be forthcoming from the NRCS, and because I think it really does need both parties to work together. I agree with you completely in that regard, Deon. I know it's not fun to be an inspector or an auditor. You're never the most popular person, but I do also think that the way you approach an audit or an inspection can definitely determine the success of the outcome. And so I think working together here is definitely the way to go. The last question, and it has to do with the micro specifications. So Penny mentioned earlier the GEMRA discussions regarding the levels of listeria, but just as far as that's concerned, when it comes to the testing of these products, because Listeria monocytogenes was the reason for this outbreak, are we going to be working on the non-detected levels, or are we going to be looking at the 100 CFUs of the SANS 885? is there a final decision with regards to how that will be implemented?
Thanks for that question, Linda. The draft reviewed SANS contain the microbiological section, and in there it is highlighted that there will be two streams of regulating LM. The one is where the operator, through validation, determines whether the product promotes or support the growth of LM, and then the other stream will be whether it's not supporting the growth of LM. And then there are obviously various maximum limits for LM. The one, as we may all know, it's 0 colony forming units per gram, and the other one is 100. And then there's also a section on where the NRCS will do the testing, the final testing, whether it will be at the port of entry with regards to imports, or whether it will be at retail level or at factory level after production. So that is drafted in the current SANS 885, 2 streams, 2 levels, 0 and then also 100 CFUs per gram. Thanks, Linda. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. I think the only problem with the situation that we're faced with is the draft. so we've got a BC which is in place, and we've got a draft, and it's kind of like, you know, the which one comes first, and where do we, you know, put our food safety management system controls in place. I know what I'm in favor of, but I also know that there's 2 schools of thought with regards to that. So I think that, you know, what you've said is so important, and I think in light of the outbreak also very important. Does the product promote the growth of Listeria monocytogenes, yes or no? And if it does, well, you would be well advised to take the most conservative route and not find anything as far as possible in your product. So, but I think it does give us a bit of a quandary because of the mismatch when it comes to, you know, the 2 pieces of legislation, or the part of the legislation that is referenced by the BC, which has been in draft for such a long time, and is again, like Regulation 429, causing a lot of frustration from industry's perspective. Deon, one last question, and I'm also putting this out to the audience, please. Your last questions need to hit me like yesterday. Deon, any chance that in 2021 there will be a further workshop, you know, with industry to kind of walk through the inspections, you know, just an opportunity to communicate and to kind of like, you know, debrief on what we've learned in very difficult circumstances, obviously with COVID, and maybe just to, you know, how could we make this process easier for each other? Any chance of having a formal workshop like that in 2021?
Thanks for the question, Linda. As I've indicated earlier, we've responded to the letter and request from SAMPA pertaining to this matter, and we are more than willing to have further workshops to discuss the VC and the SANS, and then also to give clarification on technical issues pertaining to the VC and the SANS. So that is going to be our terms of reference, and we've indicated this to Peter. And but we don't want a situation where we are going to not you know, agree to disagree, so to say, during our discussions. We don't want to. We want to clarify issues, and we even, Linda, we even received some indication of, you know, the SMMEs that we need to assist but we've indicated that we need to discuss this because we don't want the playing field not to be leveled, so to say, where we assist a certain sector of the industry and not the other members. So there are certain issues that we first need to address, and we're waiting for, I think, maybe a response again from Peter, and then we will definitely consider setting up the workshop in 2021 or as soon as possible.
That sounds really good. I'm happy to volunteer to be arbitrator if necessary, because I really think this is so important. Okay, 2 quick questions that have come in. The one is, do you guys comment on the label before the product launches? I mean, are you supposed to be doing, a label review before a new product, or does that only happen on the inspection, or is that not something you guys are involved with?
In the VC, there is a section on markings. There's also a section in the SANS on markings and labeling. So that will be our mandate, so to say. However, in all our VCs, we reference national legislation, and that may either be DALAD or the National Department of Health, the Foodstuff, Disinfectants and Cosmetics Act. But for a start, we are going to zoom into the requirements. I think it's there are basically 2 requirements currently in the VC or in the SANS that talks to the establishment number that should be there allocated by the NRCS, and then also with regards to the description of the various processed meat products. And I don't think at this stage we are going to zoom into other requirements. If we get receive complaints from the industry, then obviously we will defer these complaints to the relevant government department, which may be either National Department of Health or DALAD. For example, in terms of nutritional values and so on, they are the experts. So we will just focus on that provisions currently, Linda, to answer your question in the SANS. Thank you.
Okay, then one last question, and then a comment from your fellow regulator. Some of us are feeling left out. It seems like I think you've explained to us the whole COVID situation. I think everybody fully appreciates, the impact that it had on many organizations. I think the only challenge is that the food industry was considered essential services, and hence had to consider or had to continue business as usual, regardless of, the risk-based approach by government, which is unfortunate because I think, we just didn't necessarily have, congruence. But there has been, or rather industry is commenting that they feel there have been delays in assigning auditors to facility, feedback on the audits and what have you. So yeah, some of us are missing you. It seems that we would like to have you around more often. Is it because we haven't got enough people?
Thank you for that question, Linda. That's a very good indicator. If you miss the regulator, that is so nice to hear. Then it's a very good relationship. Linda, it's not an issue about warm bodies or human resource capacity. I think we are streamlining now our processes and our systems. As we speak, we are busy with a management review that mainly, or in most part, focuses on the implementation of VC 9100 and SANS 885, and we're doing an assessment and also a operational gap analysis. I can indicate to you that we've started with factory inspections, we've started with sampling. I saw microbiological results myself because I'm authorizing these results. But we need to now obviously intensify our inspections and our visits to you, and if there are any problems, we would like to make this request, Linda. If there are any issues with regards to feedback from inspectors, then the managers are welcome to contact me to give me the details of the particular area operators. And I know that the industry is also aware that they may complain. We don't encourage complaints because it is not always welcome in terms of a quality management system to have a lot of complaints. But that is also a platform. I think that's a last resort to get some reaction or proactive reaction. But we are going to close the gaps. We are going to intensify, as I said, and we're going to contact a lot of processed meat facilities that corresponded with us with regards to, are they falling under the scope, are they not falling under the scope. So we are going to do that. We're going to increase the inspections. I don't think we're busy we're currently busy with food safety verifications. That will happen later, but we're busy now with physical inspections, and then also with verifying the status of registration of the facilities, because the industry must also be aware that there is some degree of difficulty for us at this stage where not everyone is registering on our platform, on the website. And then what we've instituted now in terms of our SOPs is to call, to web, to Skype, to do virtual meetings or say hello to the operators. And if that is not successful, then we need to physically visit the operators to verify whether they indeed fall under our scope. And under COVID-19, Linda, and the industry and participants, we don't want to do that. That must be our last resort. Obviously, that is part of our inspection program where we do surveillance, but we don't want to go verify whether an operator falls under our mandate. So we would like to request you to assist us also in that regard. If there are members of SAMPA or other members that you know of, to encourage them to register on our domain or website. Thank you.
I think that's a fair comment. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the man. He's available to hear your feedback, and I think that you should take him up on that offer. If he's in a management review, one of the requirements he is supposed to be looking at is the levels of customer satisfaction, which also includes dissatisfaction. So I think you should definitely, use the opportunity to constructively relay your experiences so that we can do this better. Comment from your fellow regulator with regards to the Listeria mono levels, and hoping and praying that the NRCS will take the route which will ensure that the product is in fact safe. We have gone completely and ridiculously over time. Deon, thank you so much for your willingness to answer my the last word from our hosts today, Mérieux NutriSciences. And Mutsa, what would you like to just say to your guest speakers and to your audience who hung around? I have to say we still have 119 people online, so that just shows you the level of interest. I'm just mentioning this now to the regulators. It just shows you how much we really do want to talk to you. So I think we need more of these opportunities to most definitely interact and to have maybe roundtable discussions, and so that we can understand one another a little better. Mutsa, would you like to take us home? Thank you so much. Have I muted you? I'm sorry.
Thank you for unmuting me. Okay. Thank you to everyone who held on to the last, to the bitter end, as you would say. The regulatory framework is always things we're getting questions on. And obviously hearing from the regulators themselves is always important, because we can only, Linda, me, we can give our opinions, but the final word rests with the regulators. So we thank the regulators for coming and giving us inputs. And because the world is changing so drastically, their inputs and just getting a feel of where we are and where we sit with this was very important, I think, for us as an organization, and obviously for manufacturers as well. To Penny, Karen, Janine, Deon, thank you so much. Deon, thank you for your perseverance, but thank you all for taking time out of your day and for answering some of our questions and just giving us a bit of insights. If anyone still has questions that they feel are not answered, or they would still like to maybe dig into an issue, they can contact us directly, and we can try and liaise and try and get them answers where we possibly can. So there's still room if you need more information, or we are happy to facilitate any conversations that people would like to have. So they can still contact us. Thank you for your time and your attendance.